So today's video we're going to be doing book recommendations for those of you who are looking at getting into reading. I've had a couple of requests in like my comments and stuff asking for this type of video for those of you who want to start reading but are not quite sure where to start. So as you can see, I've got some recommendations here. I've just kind of gone through a few different categories, genres, just picked some out for each category to try and suit your needs or what you're looking at reading, or if like one category doesn't work for you, maybe you prefer a different genre of reading. So I've kind of done it that way. So the first category we have is romance, which I do have like quite a few recommendations for, as this is like typically the category that I read the most, or I have read the most, but there's definitely like different tropes and stuff that people are going to prefer, but I've got some that I feel like most people are going to like. The first one that I've got is When in Rome by Sarah Adams, or to be fair, pretty much any Sarah Adams book in general, as they are typically easier to read, more like light fluffy romances. Her newest release, the rule book, is more spicy than the other ones, but definitely pretty much any Sarah Adams book is a good go-to. But my favourite one that I feel like most people are going to like is When in Rome. So When in Rome follows Amelia, who is a pop star. She is looking to kind of take a break from like the life of fame. It's getting a little bit overwhelming, so like Audrey Hepburn in the film Roman Holiday, she decides to go on a holiday, but because of her busy schedule and stuff, she just doesn't have time to actually go to Rome, so she goes to Rome, Kentucky instead. But on the way there, her car breaks down and she bumps into Noah, who obviously lives in this small town, and he offers to let her stay in his guest room on a temporary basis while she kind of gets her car fixed and all that jazz. So the story then follows obviously Amelia and Noah getting to know each other a little bit better, because obviously she's staying there with him, and they have the whole small town found family kind of aspect in the book, and it's just so cute and it's light and fluffy and such a quick read. I think I read this in like a day or two, and yeah, absolutely loved it. Again, Sarah Adams books are just always a go-to, to be honest, when I need like a palate cleanser romance that's just no thoughts, just great vibes. So this is definitely what that is. The next recommendation that I have is a YA romance, and that is The Summer of Broken Rules. This honestly gives all the summery vibes, so if you're going to read this at any time, I would definitely recommend reading it in the summer, but it is just such a fun book in general. So our story follows Meredith and her family. So every year they take a trip to Martha's Vineyard, and this year all of the family are going because there's a big family wedding happening, but there is like deeper aspects in this story, so you literally find out on the back. But Meredith has recently lost her sister, so there's the grief throughout the book of her dealing with that loss. Obviously the whole family are also dealing with that loss, so there is deeper, what's the word, like deeper themes throughout the book, as well as the romance and other aspects of the book. But one thing that I really liked about this book, so when they go to Martha's Vineyard for the wedding, they all decide to play a big game of assassin with water guns, and obviously each person gets given like a target that they then have to go and assassinate. So Meredith actually teams up with one of the groomsmen, Wit, and then they form a friendship, and eventually a romance blossoms between them. So it is a YA romance, but it is really fun. Like the whole setting on Martha's Vineyard and the assassin thing, really fun, and obviously like I say, there is deeper themes throughout the book as well. But yeah, really enjoyed this one and highly recommend. And like I say, all the summer vibes, especially with like Martha's Vineyard, just how the author describes it, it really helps to picture it. But yeah, amazing. I loved this one. I think I ended up giving this like 4 stars, but on some days it could have been like a 5. The next book that I have is a romance but with added elements of magical realism, and that is The Sevene Slip. I know my cover looks funny, but this is like a proof copy. This was one of my favourite books from last year, one of my favourite reads ever. I literally think about it all the time. So the story follows Clementine, and she moves into her aunt's apartment, and the apartment is supposedly magical. She's heard all these stories when she's younger, and she's like, oh yeah, you know, it's nice stories, but it's not true, until one day she comes home and there is a guy in her kitchen, and he was like, oh, I meant to be staying here for the summer, but it turns out that he is actually from 7 years in the past. And then the story kind of follows like Clementine and her life and how she's dealing with stuff in her life, and then how she's also dealing with this guy who's from 7 years in the past, like how they deal with that together in the present day. I don't want to say too much because it would definitely like give away big bits of the book, but I just highly recommend reading this book. If you're unsure about the magical realism thing, it's not too much, if that makes sense. I know like obviously he's 7 years in the past, but the story kind of follows like a typical romance aspect anyway, and then there's the added elements of the magical aspect too. But I absolutely love this book, and I think most people who have gone into it being unsure about it have ended up really enjoying it. And yeah, just I highly recommend. Ashley Poston's writing is just incredible, and how she thinks of these concepts is just beyond me, but honestly so good. And there's a cute little nickname that he gives her that out of context sounds really strange, but actually throughout the book when you read it you're like, that is adorable. The next book that I have to recommend is one of my all-time favourites, and by one of my all-time favourite authors, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I would recommend pretty much any Emily Henry book, but my top one is Beach Read, closely followed by Happy Place, but definitely Beach Read is like my top Emily Henry book. So this story follows January and Gus as our main characters. Both January and Gus are authors, and they have known each other in the past. I believe it's from college. I read this book a while ago, but I believe they knew each other in college or that kind of time. January and Gus then bump into each other again when January goes to clean out her father's beach house, because they end up actually being neighbours for the summer. And they're both going through like a writing slump, so they decide to swap genres for the summer and see who can write a book first in the other person's genre. And then the story kind of follows them like planning out dates and days out and activities and stuff for them both to like partake in, to kind of like give them inspiration to write their books. Emily Henry's stories read more like a literary fiction with added elements of romance, because there's definitely like deeper themes throughout the book that like each of the characters is going through, and then how they deal with that together. It's just amazing, and I just can't fault Emily Henry ever. So yeah, if you're definitely looking for like, again, a bit of a different romance, I would definitely recommend going for like an Emily Henry book. Like I say, pretty much anyone will do the trick. But Beach Read is definitely my favourite. I literally binged this on my holiday, and again, perfect summer read, but there is obviously deeper themes and stuff in here as well. The next recommendation that I have is actually a romance series, and that is the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. So there's 5 books in total in this series, and it's like a cowboy romance small town series. It's set in the town of Chestnut Springs. If you have read any of Elsie Silver's other books, so like I think she has the Gold Rush Ranch series, it's in the same world as that, just with different characters. So I believe like the sister of the male main characters in this series, she is in the first series that Elsie Silver wrote. But yeah, so the Chestnut Spring series, like I say, is made up of 5 books in total. Each book follows a different couple, but you do still see the other couples throughout all of the books. And each book kind of has like different tropes and different romances. So like one has like a single dad romance, one's like a friends to lovers, and yeah, they all have different romances, but each of them are equally amazing. My favourite one personally is Reckless, because I just love Theo, and that's the 4th book in the series. But each of them is just absolutely amazing, and the small town vibes are just so good. There's also like undertones of like found family and girlhood, and honestly all those elements just make this such an amazing series. And I love seeing like glimpses of the characters in the other books. I just really feel like that ties the whole series together. Like in general, I think the whole series is like a 5-star. Not each book has been a 5-star for me, but like the whole series in general is a 5-star series. But yeah, I feel like because there has like different romances in each of the books, I feel like one of the books would be for you. So yeah, I love the whole series. But like I say, Reckless is definitely my fave. The next book that I have is Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood. Again, I'd pretty much recommend any of Ali Hazelwood's books, but I feel like this one's probably good to start with, especially because it's like a YA romance. So if you're not looking for like spicy aspects in a book, then this one's probably the one to go for. But pretty much any Ali Hazelwood book is amazing, especially Love Theoretically. I absolutely adore that one so much. So this is a YA rivals to lovers romance. So our main character Mallory, she stopped playing chess a while ago. Something happened and she just stopped playing. She hates it, she doesn't want to play anymore. But one day she's made an offer that she can't refuse, so she starts playing chess again, and she has to go up against Nolan, who is then obviously her rival because he's like world champion of chess. Despite there being heavy chess aspects to this book, I feel like it's still very easy to understand, really enjoyable. I wasn't sure whether I was going to like it because of the chess aspect. I don't really know anything about chess, but it's really not hard to understand at all, and the chess was actually really interesting to read about throughout the book. It's definitely perfect for people who want to like dip their toe into reading romance, because there is romance elements in this book, but they're not like really strong throughout the book. It's not a really strong theme of romance, so definitely one for people who are looking to kind of get into romance reading but are not ready to dive right in there. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one. This is one of her more newer releases, and Ali Hazelwood doesn't really typically write YA romances, so again I was dubious about this one, but definitely really enjoyable and so quick paced, especially when like the chess aspect picks up just really quick. The next category that I have is mystery and thrillers. So the first book that I'm going to recommend to you is The Inmate by Freida McFadden. Pretty much any Freida McFadden book, again, is just amazing to start with. They're just so quick paced. This one is a little bit out there towards the end, but still very enjoyable for the rest of the story. But pretty much any Freida McFadden book you could pick up and really enjoy, especially if you're getting into thriller. Again, they're just so quick paced and just what you need with a thriller. I think you just want to get to the end, and there's definitely like big plot twists in her books. So this story follows our main character Brooke, who moved away from her town when an incident happened while she was in high school. Some of her friends and stuff had this bit of like incident that happened one night and she moved away, but she's now moved back to the small town and she's become a nurse practitioner at the local prison. However, her childhood sweetheart, who was also involved in the incident, is actually an inmate at that prison due to her giving a testimony that actually put him there. So this story is told in the past and present tense, so you see her navigating through seeing her ex-boyfriend again and dealing with moving back to the town, whilst also playing out the story of the incident that happened all those years ago. So you do actually get an insight into what happens like actually in her point of view, as well as obviously seeing her navigate present day situation. Again, it's just so fast paced. Like I say, it is a little bit out there at the end, but the story itself was actually really enjoyable, and it did catch me off guard because I was like, there is no way that is going to be the ending. So it did catch me off guard. Big plot twist towards the end, but very enjoyable. The next thriller that I have to recommend to you is also one by Freida McFadden, and that is The Housemade. I feel like this is probably her most talked about book, to be honest, because it is actually a trilogy, but I've only read the first book, so I can't recommend you the other ones just quite yet. But the story follows Millie, and she ends up being a housemaid, like a live-in housemaid, for a rich family called the Winchesters. Everything seems fine, you know, she kind of needs a new job, and this seems like really ideal for her situation. And then things start getting really weird. So the wife of the family just starts making tons of mess and acting really strange and saying things and then changing what she said and saying that Millie's lying about things and that she stole certain things. It just, yeah, it's really weird. It kind of gives like Gone Girl vibes. I kind of predicted the ending, but a lot of people have been really shocked. But yeah, it definitely is really interesting. I don't want to say too much about it, but obviously the story then plays out and you see kind of what's going on with the wife, why she's acting this way, how it affects Millie and all of those sorts of things. Yeah, so I am excited to actually continue this series because it doesn't necessarily leave it on a cliffhanger, but it definitely entices you to carry on reading the trilogy. But yeah, really interesting, and like I say, Freida McFadden books are just so quick paced. I literally read this in like 2 days. The next recommendation that I have is actually like a crime mystery series, and that is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is actually a YA Criminal Minds type series. The series actually follows a group of individuals who are all scouted to be part of this FBI group called The Naturals. Each individual has a natural ability to help the FBI, whether it's like profiling or lie detection or data analysis. They all have their own natural ability that allows them to help the FBI on certain cases. It follows like 5 individuals that are actually part of this Naturals program, and then each book follows a new case that they are solving. It also gives like a backstory into each of the characters and their upbringing and why they are the way they are, how they got these natural abilities. So yeah, it's really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Again, so quick paced. I kind of guessed some of it but not all of it, so there is definitely big plot twists in there, and it's so interesting having like a backstory on each of the characters. If you've watched Criminal Minds or any sort of like mystery type program, this series is like definitely for you. And it's a YA series, so it's not too gruesome or anything like that, so don't be worried about stuff like that, but it's definitely a good place to start. And I feel like it's really interesting, like trying to be a detective, like through when you're reading the book, trying to work out what's happening or who's going to be the culprit and like all that sort of stuff. So really interesting, really fun, and like I said, really quick paced. The series is actually made up of like 4 books and then a novella to wrap everything up. And like I say, each of the books follows like a new case, but there is like a continual case happening throughout the whole series that ties it all together. And I'm assuming you find out at the end. I've still got the last book to read, but I feel like that's where it's leading to. You're going to find out the answer to what is happening. It does follow like one particular character, Cassie, so she's our main character throughout the books, and you kind of read from like her point of view, but you definitely get more insight into all of the characters in general, and there is that like found family aspect to the series as well. The next category I have is fantasy or books with a magical element to them. So the first series that I'm going to recommend is Aatar by Sarah J Maas, and this honestly is like, I feel perfect for people who are looking to get into the fantasy world or fantasy reading. I had never read a fantasy book before I read Aatar, and it was really easy to understand. I feel like sometimes you have to read over like a couple of things, but that might have been me. I was very confused at like some bits, but then everything makes sense in the end. You just have to trust the process with this. She definitely wraps everything up, and if she hasn't told you what's going on at one point, that's because it's for another book. But yeah, definitely easy to understand and definitely great for people who are looking at getting into fantasy. The series follows Feyre. She's our main character throughout it, and it's written from like her point of view. So she is actually from the mortal world. She doesn't have any powers or anything like that, so she's from the mortal world. Her family are quite poor, so she has learned to hunt, and one day she accidentally kills a fairy who's like disguised as a wolf. That's like a treasonous act. So then she, I don't know if treasonous is a word, but it's a treasonous act. So then she has to go and live amongst the Fae. It was either go and live amongst them or they're going to kill her, so she goes and lives there, and then there's like situations happening in the Fae world that they're dealing with. I can't say too much because obviously it's a series and it goes throughout the series, and yeah, I can't say too much on it, but there's like situations that are happening that you follow along with. They're like heavy themes of romance throughout the books as well, so it's not just pure fantasy, it's more of like a romantasy series. But yeah, really interesting, and like I say, quite easy to understand for people who are getting into fantasy. It's not really complex like magical system or anything like that. It's definitely quite easy to understand. The next book that I have is like another romance with magical elements, a little bit like the 7 Year Slip. I didn't know which category to put this in. Same with the 7 Year Slip, this could fall into magical or romance, either way. But that book is This Spell's Love by Kate Robb. This book is kind of like a sliding doors romance. Our main character Gemma breaks up with her boyfriend and she wants to do a love cleansing spell sort of thing, so she gets drunk with her auntie and her cousin, I think it's her cousin, and her best friend Dax, who has been best friends with her for so long. They do this love cleansing spell, but Gemma has to seal the deal by kissing her best friend Dax, and she's kind of like, nothing's happened, you know, this spell's done nothing. But then when she wakes up, she is in a different life, so she gets to see how her life would have panned out if things had happened differently, if she'd made different choices, if she hadn't been with her boyfriend, all those sorts of things. But one problem is that Dax doesn't know who she is anymore, so to get back to her old life she has to convince Dax to kiss her again, but obviously they're strangers in this world. It's definitely very interesting story. I really enjoyed it. I actually had it as an ARC last year and then went and bought the actual physical book because I wanted to reread it again this Halloween autumn season. Romance is definitely like so sweet. It's like a friends to lovers romance, but obviously he doesn't know who she is straight away, if that makes sense. Like, you know that they are meant to be friends, like they're the best of friends, but he doesn't know who she is, so it's kind of a friends to lovers romance but also not at the same time. Definitely for people who want a romance but are looking for something with more of a fantastical magical element to the story. It's just so sweet, so cute, and yeah, I loved this when I first read the book. I think I gave it like 4 stars. And the last recommendation I have for you is another fantasy series. The series is not finished yet, but this is the Powerless Powerful series by Lauren Roberts. So Reckless has also just come out and I'm in the midst of reading that at the moment, but I do definitely still recommend it because it's amazing so far. I'm like halfway through. The series follows Payden. She's our main character throughout all of the books, and she is an ordinary. So in this fantasy world there's ordinaries and there's elites. Elites have powers, they different powers. Some are really strong, some can mind read, some can like walk through walls, that sort of thing, and the ordinaries have no powers whatsoever. Now the king doesn't want any ordinaries in his land. He said the ordinaries are plaguing the elites and like draining their powers sort of thing. So he kills off all the ordinaries, and then any more ordinaries within the kingdom are immediately banished or killed or that sort of thing. Now Kai, he's one of our other main characters. He's the enforcer, so he has to go and kill these ordinaries. But Kai and Payden are both put in these annual trials that they have. They're kind of like Hunger Games style trials where they have to like battle for survival. It's not just Payden and Kai, there are other elites that are also in this. So Payden is kind of posing as an elite. She says she's a psychic and that's how she kind of goes undiscovered sort of thing. So yeah, so the first book follows the trials and how she's kind of like dealing with covering up the fact that she's an ordinary, and there's also romance aspects to this as well between Payden and Kai, but obviously they can't be together. He's the enforcer, she's an ordinary, he doesn't know that. And yeah, and then Powerful follows Adina, who is Payden's best friend. So it follows kind of what she is doing in the time that Payden's at the trials. There's another romance within this. This is a novella between Powerless and Reckless. I definitely recommend you reading this between the two books, but definitely after Powerless, because it will ruin a big thing that happens in the end of this book. So yeah, it's told from Adina's point of view, and if you've read Powerless, like, you will know how heartbreaking it is in that point of view, so just prepare yourself in case you haven't read it. So this is told from Adina's point of view, like what she's doing while Payden's in the trials and her little romance story and stuff like that. And then Reckless kind of follows on from Powerless, the end of Powerless. I'm not going to say what it follows whatsoever because it will ruin the ending of Powerless, but it does follow on from there, and there is going to be a third book coming out next year, so I definitely recommend picking these up before that book comes out because you are going to get FOMO. Like, it is amazing. It's just, yeah, the best series. But those are all the recommendations I actually have for you, so hopefully one of those is going to help you start your reading journey. If you have any more recommendations, then comment them down below. I would love to hear them. I might not have read some of your recommendations and you might have some other suggestions for people who are also looking at getting into reading, so comment them down below. I'm really excited to see what you all say. But thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you in another one super soon. Bye.